Chapter 3, Part 3. Lead by Example, the Dharma of Influence. Scenes 3:21, 3:32. Scene: the Kurukshetra battlefield still quivers with anticipation. Horses stamp their hooves, banners whip in the wind, conches echo like thunder. Yet the real storm is inside Arjuna's heart. Krishna has already taught him about the wheel of sacrifice and the myth of inaction. Now he shifts Arjuna's gaze toward another truth: influence. Arjuna is not just any warrior hesitating with a bow. He is a leader, a prince of the Pandavas, a role model for brothers, allies, and future generations. If he retreats now, it will not be a personal decision. It will ripple outward, shaping the choices of countless others. Krishna leans close and reveals the Dharma of Influence, the truth that what the great do, the world follows. Then, in ancient India, kings were not just rulers, but moral compasses. Their conduct set the standard for their people. When a ruler upheld dharma, justice flourished, rains came on time, and society prospered. When a ruler fell to greed or arrogance, corruption spread like poison. Families too mirrored their elders. Children learned not by instruction but by observation. Teachers were revered because their lives were living textbooks. Krishna reminds Arjuna that his actions will echo beyond this battle. If he walks away, others will believe it is acceptable to abandon duty when it becomes uncomfortable. If he fights with clarity and detachment, others will find courage to fulfill their responsibilities. Even Janaka, a king who attained liberation, continued to act because his people needed his example. The burden of influence is inseparable from leadership. Now, this wisdom is not confined to ancient courts. It is alive in our families, workplaces, communities, and nations. Parents may preach values to their children, but children copy behavior, not lectures. If a father tells his child never to lie but bends the truth for convenience, the child learns hypocrisy. If a mother urges calm but lives in constant anxiety, the child absorbs worry more than words. In organizations, teams mirror leaders. If a manager is careless, the team becomes careless. If the leader is disciplined and compassionate, the team reflects that energy. Even in nations, the character of leaders seeps into the culture. Citizens often normalize what leaders tolerate. In our digital age, influencers set trends that millions imitate, sometimes mindlessly. Clothes, language, attitudes, even values spread through imitation more than instruction. Think about it in your own life. How often have you acted a certain way simply because someone you respected behaved that way? And how often have you regretted realizing that your actions influenced others without you even noticing? Influence is constant, whether or not we acknowledge it. Krishna's teaching makes this plain. Arjuna's duty is not only to fight for Dharma, but to model Dharma through his own behavior. Focus. The essence of this section is piercing. Walk the talk. Your example matters more than your speeches. You are always influencing. Your children, your colleagues, your community, sometimes even strangers who silently watch. Every act either strengthens clarity or spreads confusion. Every choice either uplifts or corrodes. You cannot escape being a model for someone. The only question is whether you will be a model of courage and responsibility, or of avoidance and weakness. Krishna's challenge to Arjuna is timeless. Lead consciously, because others will follow. 3:21, the law of example. Scene. Krishna declares, whatever a great man does, others imitate. Whatever standard he sets, the world follows. His voice cuts through the battlefield noise like a blade. Then, for Arjuna, these words land heavily. He is not just one fighter among many. He is the Pandava leader, admired by allies, feared by enemies, remembered by history. If he abandons his bow and walks away, what message will it send? His brothers, soldiers, and even common people will conclude that duty is optional. They will say, if Arjuna himself ran away, why should we endure hardship? But if Arjuna fights with clarity, without hatred, purely for Dharma, others will find strength to stand for what is right in their own lives. The law of example has already shaped history. When Rama upheld Dharma, his people flourished in justice and prosperity. When Duryodhana surrendered to envy, his followers embraced corruption. Leaders are mirrors, and society sees itself in them. Krishna presses Arjuna to realize that his hesitation is not private weakness, it is public influence. Now, this verse is alive in every household and workplace today. Children learn more from what parents do than what they say. A father who cheats but demands honesty teaches dishonesty. A mother who sacrifices with joy teaches love without speaking a word. Teams and companies copy their bosses. If the leader cuts corners, the team will too. If the leader arrives on time and treats people with respect, the group reflects it. Communities and nations mirror their leaders. If public figures normalize greed, arrogance, or dishonesty, society drifts in the same direction. If leaders embody integrity, people feel inspired to rise higher. Even on social media, influencers set examples for millions. Clothes, language, habits, even values spread because someone is watching and imitating. Krishna's wisdom is eternal. What you do multiplies through others, for good or for ill. Focus. Your life is never just your own. Every choice sets a standard. Every action writes an unwritten rule. You may think no one is watching, but someone always is. Ask yourself, is my example building Dharma or weakening it? Influence is not optional. The only choice is whether it will uplift or corrode. 322. Even Krishna acts. Scene. Krishna looks steadily at Arjuna and says, "There is nothing in the three worlds for me to gain. Nothing remains unattained. Yet still I engage in action." The words fall like thunder on the battlefield. Imagine the effect on Arjuna. He has just heard that the divine being who stands as his charioteer, the Lord of the universe, needs nothing, desires nothing, and lacks nothing. Yet that same being declares that he acts ceaselessly. The drums of Kurukshetra fade for a moment as these words echo in Arjuna's mind. If the Supreme has no need but still chooses action, then how can Arjuna, a mortal warrior bound by family, society, and dharma, even think of escape? Then, for Arjuna, this is both shocking and illuminating. Krishna is making it plain that action is not only about personal need. Most people work because they want something: food, wealth, respect, security, or recognition. Arjuna himself is caught in this web. He fears that fighting will bring sorrow, that not fighting will bring shame, and that either choice will affect his own happiness. Krishna cuts through this confusion. He says, "Look at me. I have everything, yet I act." The message is clear. Action can be undertaken not for gain, but as a model for others. The divine sets the example so that humanity does not sink into laziness or apathy. Even when he takes human form, Krishna acts to show the path of Dharma. If even God himself does not retire into passivity, how can Arjuna consider it? Now, bring this into our lives today. How often do we hear the thought, "Why should I bother? What's in it for me?" Parents sometimes ask, "Why keep explaining when children don't listen?" Teachers wonder, "Why prepare so carefully when students may not care?" Leaders think, "Why serve when people only criticize?" These questions flow from the same mindset Arjuna has, seeing action only through the lens of personal reward. Krishna's words strike us here. Act not because you need something, but because others need your example. A parent may be tired, but the child is watching. A teacher may be unrecognized, but the student is learning. A leader may not crave more power, but the community needs a model of integrity. In a world that copies more than it listens, actions matter more than speeches. This also challenges the modern tendency towards self-centered freedom. We are taught to chase comfort, to retire early, to drop responsibility as soon as possible. But Krishna says, true maturity is not in walking away, but in acting with detachment. Even when you have no selfish need, you act for the sake of others. This is why the greatest figures of history, saints, reformers, visionaries, did not stop working once they were inwardly free. They continued to act, to guide, to uplift. Their actions were not driven by craving, but by compassion and example. Focus. The lesson of this verse is profound. Do not measure your duty by what you gain. Measure it by the light it gives to others. Even if you are inwardly complete, your actions still matter because they inspire those around you. The next time you are tempted to withdraw with the excuse, "I do not need this anymore," remember Krishna's words, "I have nothing to gain, yet I act." Your presence, your consistency, your discipline may be the example someone else desperately needs. To live like Krishna in this verse is to move from self-centered action to selfless influence. 323. If I withdrew, the world would collapse. Scene. Krishna's voice grows firmer. If I did not act, these worlds would perish. People would follow my inaction, and confusion would prevail. The declaration shakes Arjuna's imagination. He sees not just himself on the battlefield, but the entire fabric of society trembling if the Lord himself chose inaction. The implication is startling. If even Krishna, who has nothing to gain, must keep acting, then Arjuna's hesitation is not a private weakness. It is a dangerous contagion. Then, for Arjuna, this statement cuts deep. He realizes that influence flows downward from the highest to the ordinary. If the divine were to sit idle, the law of imitation would lead humanity into laziness, disorder, and collapse. Dharma survives not because rules are written, but because examples are lived. Kings uphold justice, and the people imitate them. Elders guide households, and the young copy them. Teachers embody wisdom, and disciples reflect it. If leaders withdraw, chaos follows. Krishna is teaching Arjuna that his decision will ripple through the entire structure of Dharma. Should he flee from duty, others will find excuses to flee as well. The war is no longer only about him. It is about the precedent he sets for generations. Now, how relevant this feels in our age. When leaders in politics lie or exploit, citizens quickly lose faith in law and order. When managers in companies cut corners, employees normalize the same shortcuts. When parents shirk responsibility, children learn avoidance instead of courage. The decline of societies rarely begins at the bottom. It begins at the top, when those entrusted with example fail to live it. Krishna's verse reveals this eternal law of influence. Arjuna is not being asked to fight merely for victory. He is being asked to fight because his refusal will legitimize weakness in countless others. Even in our personal circles, this law holds true. A team member who avoids responsibility gives others silent permission to do the same. A sibling who refuses contribution can shift the balance of the whole family. A public figure who embraces arrogance or greed can shape entire cultures. On the other hand, one act of courage or discipline by a respected figure can uplift many. Influence magnifies both virtue and vice. Krishna's message is sharp. Your refusal to act is never neutral. It becomes a message that others copy, consciously or unconsciously. Focus. The focus of this verse is urgent. Your inaction is as powerful as your action because both are examples others follow. If you hesitate in your duty, others will hesitate in theirs. If you retreat from responsibility, others will retreat too. What looks like a private escape becomes a public collapse. Remember this: your courage to act can hold the wheel of Dharma steady. Your refusal can let it fall apart. The choice is never just yours. It always echoes. 24. The Dharma of Leadership. Scene. Krishna does not soften his words. He declares, "If I were to cease from action, these people would follow my path. The order of the world would be destroyed, and I would become the cause of confusion." These lines land heavily in Arjuna's ears. Until now, he has thought of himself as a single warrior weighed down by grief. Krishna reframes it entirely. Leadership is not about privilege, but about responsibility. The higher one stands, the greater the impact of each step. Then, in ancient India, the conduct of leaders determined the rhythm of society. Kings, sages, and elders were the lodestars for their people. When a king upheld Dharma, rains came on time, harvests prospered, and families lived in peace. When rulers gave in to arrogance, greed, or injustice, the same spirit filtered into the people. The Mahabharata itself shows this clearly. Duryodhana's envy poisoned his brothers and allies. Shakuni's cunning spread through his nephews. On the other side, Yudhishthira's honesty steadied the Pandavas even in exile. Krishna points out that if he himself stopped acting, the disorder would not just remain individual. It would multiply through imitation until society itself collapsed. For Arjuna, the implication is clear. If he abandons his dharma now, the decay will not end with him. It will extend through his brothers, soldiers, allies, and the memory of future generations. Now, this principle is alive in every setting today. Leaders in business, politics, education, and families carry more than their own lives. They carry examples. When a leader cuts corners, others justify doing the same. When a parent shows disrespect, children mirror it. When a public figure normalizes arrogance, millions adopt it without thought. The responsibility of influence grows with authority. A manager's laziness may ruin a team's morale. A government's corruption may corrode an entire society. On the other hand, the discipline of one respected teacher can transform generations of students. The courage of one reformer can reset a nation's direction. Krishna is teaching that leaders have no private actions. Their choices are public messages that either uphold Dharma or unravel it. Think about this in your own circles. If you are a parent, what you do is a model for your children. If you are a team leader, your habits silently train your colleagues. If you are the elder in a community, your values set the tone for gatherings and decisions. Even online, influencers and creators shape trends that millions imitate. We often imagine our choices affect only us. Krishna insists otherwise. Leadership carries the Dharma of example, and neglect of that Dharma spreads confusion far beyond the individual. Focus. The focus here is unmistakable. Leadership is not about personal freedom. It is about responsibility for the many who follow. When you are in a position of influence, every act is magnified. If you withdraw from responsibility, you multiply confusion. If you live your duty with clarity, you multiply harmony. Arjuna's choice to fight or flee is not only about himself. It is about the moral compass of his people and of generations to come. Krishna's warning is timeless. When leaders ignore their dharma, the whole order of society trembles. 25. The difference between the wise and the ignorant. Scene. Krishna explains, as the ignorant act attached to their work, O Bharata, so should the wise act without attachment, wishing for the welfare of the world. Then, this is a crucial teaching. The ignorant act for personal gain. They work in order to enjoy the fruits of their labor. They cling to results and are enslaved by success or failure. Arjuna, in his confusion, stands close to this mistake. He sees action only as a source of grief or joy for himself. Krishna corrects this vision. The wise also act, but not with attachment. They act as service, as offering, as duty. Their work is not for themselves, but for the welfare of others. By doing so, they guide those who are still bound by attachment. They show that action can be free, joyful, and liberating when done in the right spirit. Now, this difference is alive in our age. Look at two people doing the same job. One works only for salary, promotion, or praise. Every delay or failure causes frustration. Another works with love for the task, offering their effort as service. The outcome matters, but it does not enslave them. The first is bound, the second is free. Parents, teachers, leaders all face this choice. Do you serve your family, students, or team for recognition? Or do you serve because their well-being matters? The ignorant and the wise may appear similar in action, but the inner posture changes everything. Focus. The lesson is sharp. The ignorant work clinging to reward. The wise work without attachment, for the good of the world. Your work is always visible to others. Let it be a model of freedom, not bondage. 326. Do not disturb the ignorant. Scene. Krishna continues. Let not the wise unsettle the minds of the ignorant who are attached to work. Instead, let him act, performing his duties, and thus inspire them to do likewise. Then, this is a delicate insight. Krishna tells Arjuna that wisdom is not about mocking or discouraging others. The ignorant, bound to action, may not understand detachment. If the wise ridicule them or urge them to abandon work prematurely, confusion grows. The true guide does not preach escape, but models freedom through action. In this way, the wise uplift without unsettling. Krishna himself lives this truth. Though free of all needs, he acts so that people may follow, not so they become paralyzed in doubt. Now, how often we see this mistake today? A spiritual seeker learns about detachment and begins to scorn those who live ordinary lives of family and work. They preach escape, leaving others confused and guilty. This is not wisdom, but arrogance. Real teachers do not unsettle minds. They live their truth quietly, and others are inspired naturally. In workplaces too, a manager does not criticize workers for lacking vision. He leads by example, patiently showing a higher way. In families, parents guide children by action, not by contempt. Krishna's teaching here is very practical. Wisdom is gentle, not disruptive. Focus. Do not try to pull others away from their current stage. Live your dharma with clarity and patience. Your example will inspire more than your criticism ever could. 327. The illusion of doership. Scene. Krishna declares, all actions are performed by the qualities of nature, but one whose mind is deluded thinks, I am the doer. Then, this is a metaphysical jewel. Krishna tells Arjuna that Prakriti, or nature with its three gunas, drives action. The body acts, the senses perceive, the mind responds, all through natural laws. The deluded ego claims ownership. I am doing. But the wise see differently. They recognize themselves as the witness, the self, beyond the machinery of body and mind. This does not mean inaction. It means acting without ego. Arjuna must learn that his arrows are not his. They are instruments of Dharma, flowing through the wheel of nature. The bondage is not in action, but in false identification as the doer. Now, this illusion is everywhere today. People boast of success as if they alone created it, forgetting the countless factors that supported them: family, society, nature, opportunities, even luck. The ego loves to say, "I achieved," but humility reveals the truth. Everything is interconnected. The farmer, the teacher, the colleague, even the rain contributed. The wise person recognizes this web and surrenders the ego of doership. Such recognition makes action lighter, freer, and more joyful. Focus. Do not cling to the illusion of I am the doer. See yourself as an instrument of the larger whole. Act fully, but surrender ownership. That is how freedom arises within action. Page 128, The Wise and the Gunas. Scene. Krishna adds, "But the one who knows the truth, O mighty armed, understands the divisions of the gunas and their functions. Knowing this, he remains unattached." Then, here Krishna contrasts the ignorant ego with the wise knower. The wise see that qualities of nature, sattva, rajas, tamas, drive behavior. One person speaks with passion because rajas dominates. Another sits quietly because sattva shines. A third procrastinates because tamas weighs him down. The wise do not blame or cling. They act, but remain detached, knowing it is prakriti at play. This knowledge does not make them passive. It makes them compassionate and steady. They guide without arrogance, because they know everyone is moved by forces beyond the small self. Now, this insight has practical power today. Imagine in a workplace. One colleague is restless and ambitious, another is calm and thoughtful, another is slow and resistant. Instead of reacting with irritation, the wise see the gunas at work. They act skillfully, helping each without attachment. In families, too, one child may be fiery, another contemplative. Recognizing the play of gunas helps parents respond with wisdom, not anger. In personal life, it helps us understand our own moods as natural flows rather than fixed identities. This knowledge allows detachment, and detachment allows freedom. Focus. The wise understand the play of nature and remain free. Do not be enslaved by moods, qualities, or appearances. Recognize them, act skillfully, and stay rooted in the self beyond the gunas. 329. The ignorant bound by gunas. Scene. Krishna explains, "Those deluded by the gunas of nature become attached to the functions of the gunas. The wise should not unsettle them, O mighty armed, even though he knows the truth." Then, Arjuna is told that most people live bound to their nature. They identify with their impulses, moods, and desires, believing them to be the self. They chase pleasure when rajas dominates, sink into laziness when tamas rises, or cling to purity when sattva shines. They do not see the self beyond these qualities. The wise, who know the truth, must not ridicule or unsettle them. Instead, they must guide gently, allowing them to grow step by step. Wisdom is not meant to disturb, but to inspire. Now, this lesson is timeless. We all know people who are deeply attached to their habits, their identities, or their illusions. If we rush to tear these away, we often cause resistance or despair. A teacher does not mock students for not yet knowing. A leader does not despise workers for lacking vision. Instead, they guide with patience. Even in families, a parent must allow children to learn gradually, rather than expecting sudden maturity. Krishna reminds Arjuna that wisdom must be compassionate. Knowing more does not give license to scorn. It gives responsibility to uplift with care. Focus. Do not unsettle the ignorant. Guide with patience and compassion. Let your wisdom be a light, not a fire that blinds. 330. Offer all actions to me. Scene. Krishna instructs, "Dedicate all actions to me with your mind on the self, free from desire and selfishness. Fight without agitation." Then, here, Krishna offers the essence of karma yoga. Arjuna is told, act but dedicate. Do not see yourself as the doer or the owner. Offer every action to the Lord, whether great or small. When the mind rests on the self, action becomes pure. When selfish desire drops away, even battle becomes worship. Arjuna's war is transformed. It is no longer personal vengeance, but divine service. His arrows, when dedicated, are not weapons of destruction, but instruments of Dharma. Now, this principle reshapes our lives today. We often work with stress because we believe we own the results. We think, I must succeed, I must gain recognition. Krishna gives us a release. Dedicate your work, big or small, to the divine. Cook, teach, code, manage, care, love. All can be offerings. When action is done without selfishness, agitation fades. Even in modern chaos, one can live in peace by offering every act. This does not reduce responsibility, it sanctifies it. Focus, dedicate, do not cling. Offer every act to the divine, and action becomes freedom. Your life itself can become worship when the ego is surrendered. 331. The one who follows with faith. Scene. Krishna promises, those who follow this teaching of mine with faith and without envy, they too are freed from bondage of actions. Then, Arjuna is assured that this path is not reserved only for the extraordinary. Anyone who lives by these teachings, even while engaged in ordinary duties, can attain freedom. Faith and humility are the keys. Envy and pride block the way. If one embraces the spirit of offering, life itself becomes yoga. Krishna shows that liberation is not about changing location, but changing orientation. The battlefield, the household, the marketplace, all can become paths to freedom when infused with devotion and detachment. Now, this verse speaks directly to us. Many believe spirituality requires leaving jobs, families, or cities. Krishna rejects this idea. If you live with faith and wisdom and offer your work sincerely, you are walking the highest path already. A nurse tending patients, a farmer in fields, a coder in an office, a mother raising children, all can be yogis when their actions are free of envy and rooted in offering. Spirituality is not escape, but transformation of daily life. Focus. Freedom is not far away. Live these teachings with faith, without envy, and your ordinary duties themselves will carry you to liberation. Light 32. The cost of rejection. Scene. Krishna warns, but those who out of envy disregard these teachings and do not follow them, know them to be deluded, devoid of all knowledge, and ruined. Then, Arjuna must hear both sides. If one lives in alignment with Dharma, freedom comes. If one rejects these teachings, driven by envy or arrogance, bondage deepens. To refuse sacrifice, to mock offering, to cling to selfishness, these choices destroy inner clarity. People who resist wisdom not only harm themselves, but mislead others. Krishna reminds Arjuna that influence is powerful in both directions. Just as good example uplifts, bad example corrodes. Now, this is sobering in our times. Many laugh at spirituality, dismiss wisdom as weakness, or envy those who live with clarity. Such rejection does not liberate. It corrodes. We see this when leaders mock integrity, when influencers promote greed, when communities ridicule sacrifice. The result is confusion, division, and inner emptiness. Krishna's warning is practical. Rejecting wisdom has a cost. It leads to ruin of knowledge and loss of harmony. Focus. Do not reject wisdom out of envy or arrogance. Respect teachings that uplift. Align with them, and your life flourishes. Resist them, and confusion follows. Summary. The Dharma of Influence. Scene. Krishna has now shifted Arjuna's vision from his personal dilemma to his public responsibility. He is no longer just a warrior caught in grief. He is a leader whose every choice will echo. Krishna reveals that influence is constant. Whatever the great do, others follow. Even the divine continues to act, not out of need, but to preserve Dharma through example. Arjuna must see his role as not private, but profoundly public. Then, across these verses, Krishna weaves the law of leadership. The wise act without attachment, not to gain, but to guide. 325. They do not ridicule the ignorant, but patiently uplift through example. 326. They see that action itself is driven by nature, and drop the false ego of doership. 3.27. They understand the play of the gunas and remain detached, while still engaging in duties. 3.28. They know that most remain bound by qualities, So they do not unsettle, but they guide with compassion. 3.29. They dedicate all actions to the divine, transforming duty into worship. 3.30. Those who follow with faith are freed, no matter their station. 3.31. Those who reject with envy fall into confusion and ruin. 3.32. The lesson is sharp. Leadership is not an option. Everyone influences someone. The only choice is whether your influence uplifts or corrodes. Now, in today's world, this teaching is as urgent as it was on Kurukshetra. Families rise or fall by the example of parents. Teams thrive or collapse by the example of leaders. Societies flourish or corrode by the examples of public figures. The digital age magnifies this truth, as millions copy the lifestyles of influencers. If those examples glorify greed, vanity, or arrogance, society drifts in that direction. If those examples model sacrifice, honesty, and compassion, society heals. Each of us is part of this web. We may not all be kings or warriors, but we all lead someone, somewhere. Children, colleagues, friends, even strangers observe and imitate. Our influence is not optional. Imagine if each of us lived by this wisdom. Parents showing patience and truth, not only in words, but in conduct. Leaders working with integrity and service, not for profit alone. Teachers embodying curiosity and humility, not only reciting lessons. Even ordinary workers offering their tasks as service, not grudgingly, but freely. The ripple effect would be vast. The wheel of Dharma would turn steadily because examples would align with wisdom. Focus. The focus of this section is simple yet demanding. Walk the talk. Your actions set standards for others. Influence is the hidden thread binding society together. You cannot escape it, but you can shape it. Act not from selfish need, but from clarity, faith, and offering. Dedicate your work to the divine. Live so that those who watch you rise, not fall. Arjuna's bow is heavy, not only because of his grief, but because of the weight of influence. Krishna teaches him, and us, to lead is to live consciously, for others are always following.